I'm a red tomato.
In your life.
Let me turn this. Hey, good morning and welcome to Crosstalk Podcast as I turn my light on so you can see my tomato head face. Welcome to Crosstalk Podcast. I'm David Walford here at Eatonton First UMC with my good buddies Brian Beveridge and Joe DeLoach, and we're here and we're going to talk today about waiting on the Lord. So some of you had to wait for this podcast to start, so we thank you, but that's just my shameless, cheesy intro. We're going to talk today about waiting on the Lord, and how we wait on the Lord is so important. I'll start with reading Psalm 27, verse 14, and I want to hear y'all's. We were talking about this, by the way, for like 5 minutes, and we kept saying we need to get going, but we just kept talking instead of podcasting. So we're going to try to repeat what we said. Psalm 27, you guys, reads pretty simple. Wait on the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait on the Lord, or wait for the Lord. Wait for the Lord. How do you wait on the Lord? What does it mean to wait on the Lord? Does it mean just sit down and on your duff and
No.
and crack open a Coca-Cola and turn on the baseball game?
Like I said, I think waiting for God is you take time to figure out what He's given you in you to solve whatever problem you're looking at, or to endeavor whatever task you think. You just don't jump into it without thinking about it.
Right.
So to me, waiting is thinking and praying for God to show you the way. I mean, and no, I don't. Like God will take care of you, so I don't have to do anything. He never said that. He didn't expect you to sit back and do nothing. If that's the case, He wouldn't have given us a good brain. He wouldn't have given us muscles to move and arms. I mean, really, waiting means, all right, God, help me figure out how to do this. It's you work with Him. I've
got as you all know, I talk a lot about my garden, my little bitty garden in the backyard. But that garden has taught me, it just keeps teaching me so much. But
oh yeah,
I put seeds in this winter thinking I would get just a banner crop of cabbage, and I got no cabbage. I got maybe plants that look like this, and I realized, like, I've tried my best to do some things, but at the same time I've got to learn some things. So I've actually sent my soil samples over to the extension office, and I'm hoping that actively making that soil good will make things better. If I just wait on Mother Nature to sort of figure this garden out, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
It's just going to be bad again.
You get signs. There are signs when your dirt's ready.
Yeah.
If you look at like just red clay, that's not good for planting anything in. You want a dark, rich soil that's got the nutrients. You want to see that dark, richness to the clay.
Yes.
And
worms.
You don't want like a sandy pit either, because it won't grow.
Right.
But God gives us signs. We just got to be smart. I hate to say smart enough, but we got to use our brains for what He gave them to us.
That He gave us.
To follow the signs.
The Wesley Study Bible that I preach from, it says for this verse that the Hebrew word wait could also be translated hope.
Yeah.
So what is the difference in waiting and hoping?
Well, here we go back to faith. Faith is what? The sure. I always get them mixed up. The assurance of things not seen, hope for whatever.
Yeah.
That to me is the same thing. I mean, I hope. No, when I wait for God, I know He's coming. I know.
Hope is that promise that we know He is there.
Yeah.
Like faith, hope, joy, and love. Faith, hope, joy, and peace. Hope, joy, peace, and love.
And the grace of these is love.
Those are the natures of God. So when there's hope, there's God.
Yeah.
And see, with hope you do wait, because you're waiting on something to happen.
Right.
And you have the hope of it happening. So they're tied together.
You're hoping He's going to open your brain up and help you figure it out.
Well, see, a lot of times we don't understand what discernment is. And when you pray for discernment, you're asking God to give you direction and say, what do you want me to do? Show me what you want me to do. And how many times do we actually take the time to stop and say, God, what do you want me to do? Or do we just jump in and say, this is what we want to do?
Oh, you're right there.
Well, I think about our country. So there's a lot of issues in our nation I think we would all. And
Oh, you
I'm
think?
I'm not even thinking politics. I'm just thinking society, just the culture of our. So I have. So am I supposed to, by waiting? Am I just going to sit back and let it?
Well, I got
dwindle?
news for you. The younger generation, wait is not in their vocabulary.
Yeah,
It's instant gratification right now.
that's right.
I want it now. I don't want to wait for it. I don't work for it. I want it now.
I would say the older generation isn't that different in that sense. I mean, I know that the cell phones changed, created us a culture that's even harsher, even more expectant and instant. I mean, we have our companies, like if your cars or the supply chains are instant, like on demand supply chains. There's no waiting for supplies. Like if a car manufacturer builds a car, they expect the tire plant to literally build down the street because they want their tires right then and there.
Oh, yeah.
Fresh. They want them to smell like hot tires, and the brake plant has to be right there, and all the plants.
Well, if you think about it, when you go to Krispy Kreme, don't you want it to go when the light's on?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You watch them make your donuts, and when they come out, they're hot, fresh, and steamy, and you're like, wow.
You just drive by if it's
Well,
not on.
Look at when pandemic hit and everybody went toilet paper crazy. Nobody wanted to wait for their brand of toilet paper.
Never did.
They wanted it then, now. Yeah.
So
Well, here's the thing about the church, though. And you can use the Krispy Kreme thing two different ways. Is our light on in the church?
Good point.
So then we're open and we have hot, fresh Jesus right here.
Yeah, I'd say most congregations are not saying that. Most congregations are not anticipating that God's presence is going to make the difference.
Sunday school, we're in John, the book of John, and somehow we kind of navigate around and about. We end up, and I asked the question, well, why do we go to church? Why are you here?
Because
What
it's been done for
brings you
110 years. Mm-hmm. It's been done for 110
I mean,
years.
why are you here this moment when you could be at home?
Yeah, you can fold laundry.
Why or in your pajamas? Why do we? Help me figure this out. We had a nice discussion about that, about why we come to church, and why don't I just sit at home and wait for God to open the heavens and pour out? Well, it's just like riches. So many young people, what do you want to do? I don't care. I just want to make lots of money. They think it's just going to poof. God doesn't do that. He gives you the brains to figure out how to be successful. And somehow I've read it through and through. I've never read the whole Bible, but I keep looking for it. I never saw where God said He was going to make us rich.
No, he says he will supply your needs
financially.
Your needs.
Not
according to
financially,
your
no.
riches.
No.
But if you speaking to that concept of wealth, there are times, and yesterday was one of those moments when I met a pastor for breakfast up in Athens, and I had the girls in the back seat with me because mom was going to the gym, and I didn't want the girls to have to sit on they're not going to sit by themselves. They're too young for that. And so I didn't want them to have to go to the nursery and sit there and look at a television. I just, that's what they do at the gym. They just sit there and look at a television. And I said no. So they hopped in. But I just thought, there was a moment or two when I thought, I am wealthy. Like, I'm really, and it's just those moments happen every now and then. Now, I'm not financially sitting around riches creases or anything like that, but there is a sense of wealth that's right there in front of us. And I think this isn't so much about waiting, but there is something about stopping and looking around ourselves. To wait on the Lord is to get perspective, to get real perspective on what's really going on. And I during this pandemic, we've seen the best in people and we've seen the worst.
That's
in
right.
people.
Good point.
And I wish I could say, I won't name names because it's not fair to name names, but I can tell you as the pastor of this church, as one of the pastors of this church, I can tell you that there were some people who were just that their class and their demure and their patience rose, and I wish I could write them a note and say, do you realize how inspiring you were to me? Because some people had that. I would say a lot of people in this congregation had just a poise of, this is going to be okay. This too shall pass. It's going to be okay. Don't know how, but it will.
But that happens in almost any emergency, any crisis.
Yeah.
There's always some that rise to and some that don't. And it amazes me the ones that always do and the ones that don't.
It's that 9/11 scene. We've
Oh,
seen
yeah.
it over and over for 20 odd years, where you see people running in panic, and you see those firefighters walking in. It's like, oh my goodness, they had the wherewithal to just go in there, and they knew exactly what they were getting into, for the most part.
But wait for God. I don't know. To me, it's always been that's Psalm 27 is one of my favorites. I try to read it every morning anyway, and always, I believe I shall see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. What a sermon in itself. Look for the good. And I find myself, when I look for the bad or it really colors your whole personality, your whole outlook. And with that, wait for the Lord. I wait for God to help me see the goodness in the world around us.
Well, see, if you look at our Christian calendar, how many times do we celebrate waiting on Jesus? Because you have the waiting of Jesus at Advent.
Advent is what I
In
was
some ways, Lent and Advent are moments of pause.
Well, aren't we still waiting for him to come back?
We're waiting on the second coming. Well,
Our faith is a faith of waiting.
right.
We're waiting on the Lord to come.
And do you know, patience is one of the hardest things to teach a child.
It's hard to teach adults, too.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say say what you will about politicians, but we saw a culture of impatience in the last, I'd say, 8 years. We've seen a culture of impatience in our Politico, our country's Politico. There's this sort of expectation of get this done now, whichever side somebody's on. It's like my way is the only way.
My way, the highway.
There's a lot of selfish people. It's almost like selfishness of the individuals has distracted us from the greater problems and solutions that need to be considered. It's like we've become so selfish. When we become selfish and stop waiting, it's like we become helpless and we become worthless in some ways to the good of the community.
Even in our church, we have people that you have some that are gung-ho and push straight forward, and they don't wait, or they do wait for a little bit, and then they get impatient, and they can't sit there and wait for the fish to bite, and they gotta just keep casting. And then you got some that they sit back and they just wait like a sloth, and they're like, I'm not seeing anything.
Right.
That's a good analogy, fishing in life. I never thought about that. That's exactly right.
Deer hunting's the same way, right? You just sit there in a tree, and you might, over the course of a 2-month or 3-month moment, you might hit 1, maybe 2 deer, but you sit there for 2 months.
Get in
You
your
see
car,
thousands of
get in your car,
squirrels.
and you hit 6 on the way.
That's right.
You see thousands of squirrels, but no deer.
All you gotta do is just get on 44 and
And
just
zoom, zoom,
drive. You'll see 10 or 12. They're all on 44.
But that's pretty good, because when you fish, you throw it out there, and you sit there, and you wait for the fish to come.
And you watch.
And see, there it is right there.
Yeah.
You watch for the bobber.
You watch for the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living, and you wait for him.
Yeah. Somebody was telling me the other day that fishing is, if I was catching fish, I'd be fishing. I'm not catching any fish, so I'm just sitting here casting and reeling right now.
Well, see, a lot of times we feed the fish, but that's another thing with Christianity. That's what we're supposed to do, is feed the fish.
Right. So how do we encourage our community to wait on the Lord? What can we do?
We have to show them that we're willing to wait, and that we believe waiting will pay off.
Well, the other thing, too, is we got to, and part of the waiting part comes in when we have people that get impatient, they cause discord in the whole church. Yeah. It makes a rift that tears the church apart.
Right.
If they see that, they're going to turn away, and they're going to run the opposite direction. So you have to show them that you're strong in your faith. You have that strong faith in God and waiting in discernment on Him, and looking for the signs, and that'll overflow in our daily lives. It's like we were talking about in our discipleship, the mentor group last night. We were talking about our financial issues, and it's one of the verses that they came up with. God will supply your needs according to His riches. It's not always like an instantaneous, I'm going to fix it now. Sometimes it takes that last, the darkest hour before you're pulled out.
Right.
And sometimes we're like, well, why, God, did you leave me alone? Why did you leave me? He didn't leave us. He's just trying to give us a way out, and he gives us the free will
There you
to
go.
make the choice to get out of that hole on our own.
Yeah. Waiting on the Lord, and when you're sitting in a hole, the last thing you want to do is sit in that hole. But to wait on the Lord is to, I think you said it earlier, is to follow the signs, to do the preparation. I don't think we're supposed to stop preparing.
Well, that's right. That's what I was just thinking.
Preparing the way for the Lord.
Wait for the Lord doesn't mean you sit there and hold your hands.
Right. So what can we do? I mean, there's sometimes we want to do everything, and then for me, I find myself, and this is just, I think, life, but I can get very sort of focused on a project or a task or a need, and I want to tackle it, but then I realize, and just in life, I realize there are 10 other things I've got to take care of, and those things don't slow me down. They're just things I have to do. So inherently, I have to wait on the Lord, because sometimes I can go out and take care of something, just get out there and do it. I'll just get my shovel and I'll just go do it. I'll fix it. And sometimes that's good, but but doing that at the peril of other things is not healthy. And so, in a community, we have to have each other, and that's probably the thing we have to wait on them. I think we have to wait on the most is for other people to step up and walk with us. I'm not I can't be a dictator or in anything, whether it's my family or my job, or there's just nothing good about having someone bark out orders, but the community's got to come alongside, and so inherently I think that is something that happen. We have to wait for that to happen, all of us.
And see, one thing you said was about getting your shovel out. Sometimes we pull out the shovel when we really need an excavator, and that talks about you having the whole community behind us.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need that backhoe to dig a hole.
I was going to say you need a backhoe.
Or fill in the hole to fix the issue. Mm-hmm. We can dig a hole with a shovel, but it's not going to be...
But to keep going with that, I'll push back and say, okay, if I get an excavator and I fix the problem, does anybody else know what happened? A lot of times, if we do something outside, I'm thinking about the congregation, but just in life, in community, if I go do something for my family, like let's just say I go out there and I make $1 million. Are they going to appreciate and handle that $1 million like I want them to, or like they need to? No, because it was easy money. They're just going to come in and well, you just solved my problem. And this is kind of like spoil and rotten. There's a sense of spoil that happens to somebody when they don't have to work or wait. Right. So sometimes it might be more healthy to not bring an excavator in, to do what you could do. Sometimes it's healthier for the whole family to take a shovel and be a part of the process.
And I see this so much in young people, especially in today's world. Parents pull out their wallets or pull out their purse and hand them $20, $30, $40, $50. And they have no real sense of value because mom and dad always hand it to them. Whereas the students, the few and far between that I've had, that work for that $20.
Yeah.
And I think back to myself. My dad told me a long time ago, you're going to be poor all your life. I said, why? You always want something you don't have a bit of business having.
Right.
And you're going to go, and I thought, it makes sense. When I don't think I have a lot of money, I manage it to the core.
Right.
Squeeze those nickels.
Yeah.
But when I think I got a lot, I get careless.
Yeah.
That's waiting for God. That's God stepping in and saying, look, stupid. Boyce Jackson told me in the escape room, you're just retarded.
Oh God. Well, as a pastor, of course, I have hopes and desires to see the people come together and grow and be hungry for the word and invite their friends and their neighbors. In my mind, that's the ideal scenario, is where people just love being together. They know where their seat is at the table, and they also make sure there's a seat for someone that may be a next door neighbor, or maybe someone that works at the grocery store, somebody that works at the restaurant or wherever, or their job. But so to get to that place takes years. But I as a pastor, we often think it can happen in 3 years. But the reality is, everyone knows in church speak, and I think it's just community speak, is that it takes 7 years to affect change in a congregation or in a community.
Except for the youth group, they kind of surprised us. We went from 3 to 6.
Now we're up to 8.
And 8.
Yeah, you can grow, like you can grow fast.
Oh yeah.
But can you grow down?
But the
That's
reason
thing.
we grew is because the 3 we had brought. I mean, I didn't go out and get them.
Yeah.
The
They
kids
brought their
They
own
brought
cars.
ours.
We had one brand new, and it's very rewarding. It is. But
And you see the kids getting that message that, okay, we need to, and adults, I'm not trying to pick on any adult, I promise you, but kids see stuff that we don't see. They're like, we need to share the love and grace of God and invite our friends to that so they can receive the same thing we receive.
They're open.
the young people wants more. They're not inhibited as grown people. But back to my Sunday school class, why do you come to church? And they said, because it feels good. It feels warm. You feel accepted. And I thought, yeah,
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
Exactly.
I know, I spent, 20 years away from my corner. And
We can, but so there's, I think about the way patience and waiting happens. Someone, this came up in a conversation recently, but it's come up multiple times. The bamboo. So a bamboo, what you see bamboo on the side of the road. Some people think it looks like kudzu and it's it's invasive, and it is. But if you plant a bamboo shoot, if you stick a shoot in the ground, and you plant it, it'll take 4 years for that bamboo to move into the ground, and it moves across the whole spot. So you won't see it come up until year 4, and in year 4 it all pops up.
you got a forest. Yeah.
It all pops up at once. So philosophically, waiting on the Lord is kind of like that. The Lord is not doing. He is doing something. When we wait, though, we can't necessarily see what He's doing. To use the youth group analogy, we don't know what He's going to do. But then, by year 4, that bamboo all comes up.
Well, it's like the parable of the sower. And, you plant gardens.
Yeah.
I planted gardens. I know Joe's planted gardens. You throw seeds out there, and sometimes they grow. Sometimes they don't grow.
That's right.
And sometimes you get stuff you don't know what the heck it is because they get the wrong seeds mixed up.
Sometimes they grow and they don't blossom.
That's true.
What was this all about?
Well, I tell you, I actually got squash one year. I bought squash. And I guess pumpkins are a form of squash.
They are.
I got pumpkins. Jack-o'-lantern pumpkins.
Or it's vines like 20 feet long.
Right. Then I got like
But they look like squash seeds.
Then I got little baby pumpkins that were supposed to be cucumbers. And I'm like, no.
No, you know cucumber.
Sometimes you don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
And it can be frustrating. I also think about this is a different parable, but thinking about the when things come up and they don't produce fruit, how frustrating that is.
I think how frustrating it is for God.
I think ultimately God's very frustrated that He planted your seed, and here you are, and you produce no fruit. That's another story. That's
So what do you
probably
think
another
God's going to
podcast.
do with them? When
Well, He said what He was going to do with them. If it doesn't He's going to throw it away.
yeah.
Now, I got something that you talk about waiting and discouragement part. I preached at a small church here in Putnam County that they were getting discouraged because they're not growing. They're actually diminishing. They're worried about their doors being shut. And the area they're in is not a farmland, so there's not a whole lot of people to reach out to. And my sermon completely changed because it was on joy, and it went to don't be discouraged, plant the seeds. Mm-hmm. Because we plant the seeds, and it's God that waters and nurtures that. Mm-hmm. We just have to wait on His, we can plant the seeds and we can tend to them.
Right.
But you got to let God take a hold and pull. Yes. That's where the Holy Spirit comes in. It empowers us and pulls us into Him away from sin.
And along with this is a real popular saying, tie a knot and hang on. I mean, that's the truth. That's waiting. You tie a knot and hang on and wait for God.
Yeah. You can outlast a lot. Patience will get us a lot further down the road than we realize.
I hope and pray that when I leave this world, my soul, and I see God, I hope He can look at me and say, well, what is it?
Well done, good and faithful
Well
servant.
done, good and faithful servant. Mm-hmm. That's what I strive for. Did I use what you gave me? And if I didn't, then I had to pay the penalty.
Psalm 40 says, "I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. He drew me up from the desolate pit, out of the miry bog, and set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord." That, if you keep reading Psalm 40, that is, many theologians say that Psalm 40, waiting on the Lord, is a prophetic word that God placed into the heart of David for Jesus the night before he was crucified. So Jesus was, he only lived in Atlanta. He only lived in Atlanta. He doesn't live in Atlanta. He lives in Atlanta, but nobody knows it. He only stayed in Jerusalem one night in his entire life. That's just kind of mind blowing.
I didn't realize that.
It's just one of those. I was literally in Jerusalem, and that was told to me, and it was like, how did I miss that? How did I miss that Jesus only spent one night in Jerusalem? I mean, he would go there. He would go in. He'd come out. He'd go visit and worship. He'd come out. He'd go in and teach. All those things. But he would always stay, as an adult, as a pastor, as a minister, rabbi, he would stay in Bethany, which is sort of the other side of walking over the Mount of Olives. But, so Psalm 40 is a prophetic word of what will be for the night that Jesus was in the pit. And there actually is a pit where they would hold people in jail, or they would incarcerate them and hold them until they were tried. And the night that he was tried, they're pretty sure he stood in that pit that night and just sat there. But to think, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined me and heard my cry. He drew me up from the desolate pit, out of the miry bog, and set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. Jesus had to wait on the Lord. Even when Jesus was abandoned, and when he said, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" That God did not forsake him. He just did not engage in the process in that moment.
I used to tell all my classes, I don't know how I came up with it. I don't know. It's always put a smile on your face and a song in your heart. That's where the song in your heart came from.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So, and U2 and the band has a song called Psalm 40, and I will sing a new song. I will sing a new song. Comes from that. But Jesus is the new song. But waiting on Jesus, think about the thousands of years that humanity waited for Jesus to finally come on the scene. And he finally makes it, and so in many ways we've waited on the Lord. We are blessed because we don't have to wait on the Lord. The Lord came and he is returning. We have to wait on his return. But we don't like you said, we don't have to. There are signs already in front of us that we don't have to wait on the Lord in the sense that we're waiting for him to show up, though we're waiting on him to return. But he's already come, and so we, in some ways, should not necessarily hold back. We can go forward.
Well, one thing I look at and I think about is when you get your house ready for a guest to come, do you wait till the day they're coming? Or do you start preparing like a week in advance?
Well, we should wait. We should go ahead and prepare, but I can't say that we always do.
But you
at least try to make sure there's clean sheets on the bed, there's towels in the bathroom, you got toilet paper beside the toilet.
Yeah. Well, Noah was
the ultimate. Legos floating in the toilet.
Noah was the ultimate prepper.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy.
He prepared he was the original prepper. You could put Noah, the original prepper. We should we wait for catastrophe?
Or are we gonna be like the 10 virgins?
Exactly. So the 10 virgins did not prepare. Yeah. So waiting, part of waiting is preparing. Like, don't be stupid. Make some decisions for your well-being and for those around you.
Isn't there actually a verse that says wait and watch?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is actually a Psalm 27 is being spoken of for a watchman, someone on the wall. waiting for something to come, for God to come, and waiting, making sure that we don't. Waiting doesn't look like just sitting there reading a book. You gotta get ready. Like a hunter doesn't wait in the sense of reading a book, though you may take a book with you when you go hunting, but deer hunting. But like you're watching, you're preparing. You got one in the chamber, and you're ready to go.
Oh yeah, and so that's one thing. When I deer hunt, my wife, she's like, "You just sleep." I was like, "No." When you sit there and you hear a twig snap, you can hear
every squirrel.
Oh yeah.
In the forest.
And turkeys sound like there's a herd of buffalo coming through.
Yes.
When they're scratching.
Yes.
So you had to pick out certain sounds. You had to see different signs. You had to.
That's right.
You're not going to hunt where you don't see like rubs and tracks and deer scat. You're gonna.
That's right.
You're gonna find a place where there's deer actually moving.
That's right.
And this is the part that actually makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially the older generations. Are we going to the places where the people are that are moving that we need to reach out to?
Right.
Yes, we need to reach the people in the church, but we also need to reach the ones that are in the bars, the clubs, the streets.
Absolutely.
Are we preparing to grow the kingdom of God?
Well,
like He sent us to do.
That's right. Are we preparing to grow our own kingdom, or are we preparing for God's coming? Are we waiting? Do we know the difference? I don't think most of us wait long enough to know the difference. So, just thinking out loud, if this congregation, and I believe it will happen, comes to a point post-COVID where it's packed again, and I think it's starting to happen. We talked about that before the podcast. Like we're seeing an increased attendance, we're seeing increased youth groups, we're seeing momentum, and it's God's momentum. It's not ours. It's really God's. Will we just start a third service that looks just like the first two, or will we say now's the time for us to go downtown, maybe rent a storefront, and find an audience that would never want to come to the High Steeple Church, or at least initially.
That's right.
And me and you actually talked about that probably 6 months to a year ago, and we were talking about that was a vision that we actually saw. Was street. Well, it's actually one I saw was street church.
But part of waiting is knowing what you're waiting for, right? My dad's a better deer hunter than me, but I've seen him. He's told stories to me. That afternoon on the phone. Usually he calls me and we'll talk hunting stories. When he sees a 4-point buck come across the hill, and your first thought is, I'm gonna take this one down. Only if you wait, there's an 8-point. Right behind it.
Well, I tell you, one of the best deer I ever got was near a rut. I was sitting there, and you get excited when you see that deer because you're like, man, I finally get to get out of the cold, get to get out of the rain,
take pictures, eat some deer,
and I was like, no, I'm just gonna, because it was a small doe. I was like, well, let her go.
To go eat up my garden.
Well, then there was an 8-point buck that literally ran up behind her, and I took him.
Yeah.
Because I was like, he was pretty good sized, buck. And I don't hunt for, rack. I don't care about sport for that. I hunt for meat.
Right.
That was meat for my family. If I would have shot the doe, I wouldn't have had near as much meat.
Sure.
But I waited, and the buck showed up.
Yeah. But you were waiting for the buck that you couldn't see on the other side of the horizon. Right. And sometimes sports are a good analogy. It's like, are we happy with just having a winning season, or do we believe that we have what it takes to get to the playoffs? Is it enough for us just to be good, or do we want to be great? And waiting on the Lord does not mean that we don't think about the greatness that God may have for us to be.
Right.
Every cloud has a silver lining.
Right.
And I'm going to use you talking about sports. I'm going to use an analogy. Well, it's not an analogy. It's just tying it into something. I don't know if anybody knows about Marshall. Like the Thundering Herd. That's from West Virginia. That was in a plane crash in the 70s.
Right.
They waited for like 4 years before they hired a coach because they were not sure that they could bring a football team back to that school. Because they didn't know if the people would be able to receive it because of the hurt and the pain that was there.
Right.
They didn't know if they would be able to trust that enough to actually go out and support the team. In churches, you sometimes see that too, where they had that hurt and that distrust
Right.
that pulls them back from actually willing to engage and see the signs that God's put in front of them.
Right.
And once the Marshall University put out that football team and started it, their first year they packed out the stadium with a memorial.
Right.
And that's what we need to do with God. I mean, praise Him and give Him the honor, and step out and take that leap and to say, look, we can do this.
Well, to use a closer story, we know about Boyd Dennard, and 21 was tough for this church because we lost our beloved Boyd Dennard. He went to glory, but we had to wait a long time. We went from April until really end of November, 1st of December before we really found we felt like we found the right person in Randy to come back in. And that time between the two was so necessary, but it was so painful to wait.
Right.
And sometimes Marshall University waited. It may have been good to wait and think and mourn and process that loss before coming back full in. I mean, if they'd waited 6 months, that may not have worked. It may have been actually really unhealthy for them. Well, we thank you for watching us. We could talk more about this, but we think it's probably time to close up. But we thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Next week we're gonna end this series. We've had a sort of a series of questions, and the next question we're gonna ask is about John 8, forgiveness. So we've saved the best for last. So may you have a wonderful day, and may we all wait on the Lord together.
Amen.
Amen.